¿Me oís bien? Sí, ¿no?
Vale, pero...
Un attimo solo. Vale. Bueno, pues vamos a comenzar nuestra cuarta sesión del ciclo de conferencias Europa, el mundo mediterráneo y su difusión atlántica. Muchas gracias al público aquí presente y al que está online. Ahora nuestro compañero Rodrigo, a los que estén online, pues les colgará la dirección de YouTube para los que nos prefieran seguir por esa vía. Hoy tenemos de nuevo dos conferenciantes y como solemos hacer, como es ya habitual en este ciclo, pues tenemos un primer conferenciante más senior y un segundo conferenciante más junior, pero que tratarán temáticas similares para que podamos enriquecer el debate historiográfico, ¿no? con ambas perspectivas. Nuestro primer conferenciante es el profesor Andrea Caracausi, que es profesor en la Universidad de Padova y está especializado en la historia social y económica de la Edad Moderna, especialmente en el ámbito mediterráneo e italiano, con un enfoque especial hacia los gremios, el trabajo infantil, el trabajo de las mujeres y los procedimientos legales. Andrea Caracausi tiene el título en Historia por la Universidad de Padua y el doctorado por la Universidad de Bocconi, donde ha trabajado también. Además, tiene un extenso currículum, no voy a detenerme mucho porque lo interesante es escucharle a él, pero ha sido miembro de varios proyectos internacionales, es el presidente de la Asociación de Historia del Trabajo Italiana y entre sus publicaciones más recientes pues podemos destacar, por ejemplo, Information Asymmetries and Craft Guilds in Pre-Modern Markets, Evidence from Italian Proto-Industry and the Economic History Review, o Beaten Children and Women's Work in Early Modern Italy, en Past and Present, publicado en 2014. Y hoy el profesor Caracausi nos va a dar la conferencia Ribbons of the Empire, Fashion, Capitalism and Labor Commodifications Between Europe and the Americas, 17th and 18th Century. El profesor Caracausi hablará en inglés, las preguntas se las podéis hacer en español, italiano o inglés, como prefiráis. Si hay algún problema de traducción, pues tenemos aquí personal suficiente para asistir si fuera necesario. Así que, profesor Caracausi, tiene usted la palabra. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Natalia, and thank you very much to all of you. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to be with you in the room in Seville, but I hope to have the opportunity to travel again very soon. At the end of this morning, I got my second dose of the vaccine for COVID, so on the one hand, I'm very happy because I will be able, and I hope to travel soon and to come to you in Seville. On the other hand, if you see that after an hour I'm not very well, this is the consequence of the vaccine. So now today I would like to present you a research that is still a work in progress. I started to work on ribbons many years ago, but sometimes I always find very new interesting points that pushed me to continue in this research. And today I will try to present you some very important aspects of ribbon making in relation to the connection between Europe and the Americas, and especially the Mediterranean and the Americas. And I hope, but I am sure that I will receive a lot of suggestions and comments from you, from your audience, because this is a part of this research that I want to develop in the future years. And so your comments are very useful for me. If you like, also in the future, you can send me an email and we will discuss, or we will chat in another occasion. So this research, as I told you, is a very research in progress. These are the points that I would like to discuss with you. From the one hand, I will start from some research questions, and later I will discuss with you the importance to look at ribbons as objects. I will also show you the materiality of ribbons, why ribbons are an important topic, and why they became a so important topic in the history of early modern Europe and early modern economic and social history of Europe. We will discuss in particular fashion and markets, and here I would like to introduce you to this topic of the link between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic world. Later, we will discuss also the marketing strategies of the producers and the consequences for the whole productive chain. Finally, I will only put here some aspects concerning work and technology, but we will come back also maybe in the discussion or in another time. Today I would like to focus with you especially on markets and marketing strategies and the connection between these two parts. So the research questions. First of all, there are three main points in this talk and in this research. The first one is the connection between fashion and capitalism, especially the spread of capitalism during the early modern period, so prior to the Industrial Revolution. What is important to remember is the fact that fashion means also the introduction not only of new objects or new consumptions, but also new identities in these objects. So it's important to consider the cultural sphere and the economic sphere at the same time. The second point is that the second main area of research is the problem of the primitive accumulation and the capital accumulation during the early capitalism, especially in the 16th, 17th, and the 18th century. What I argue here, using also the debate in past and present in 2012 between Bill Sewell and Michael Sonnenscheer, is the fact that capital accumulation is not only from labor, so merchants and capitalists were able to draw a lot of capital from the labor, okay, but also from the consumption surplus. So here it is important to look at the role of consumers and the efforts that consumers had in spreading new items, in convincing also other people to buy new items. This is an important point when we discuss also the identity or the existence of a class of consumers. So the fact that consumers are a key agent in the process of capital accumulation by others. So you buy something, you use something, you display something in your bar, in your place, in your square, whatever you want, at home or outside your home, and you are also someone who is enriching someone else, okay? In this case, capitalist. The third point is the connection between capitalism and labor commodification, but not in the sense of the spread of wage earners and wage laborers, but also focusing on the fact that capitalism is linked to other forms of labor, for instance, slavery, indentured labor, or forced labor, or child labor, etc., etc. So the idea that the spread of capitalism is associated with a lot of labor relations and typologies of work. Convict labor as well, household labor, etc., etc. So the fact that we don't have only to say at the existence or at the presence of wage earners or employers-employees relations, but we need to consider the multiplicity of this form. And I will try to use ribbons. These are ribbons, okay? I will try to use these very small objects to try to show you a bigger story, okay? So try to understand the role of these small objects in the world of early modern society, economy and society. If you look at this picture, these pictures and these tapes are very different in their nature, of course. First of all, you can find patterned ribbons, very high quality ribbons with the silks and very important also with gold or silver, produced with gold and silver. But you can find also here very simple plain ribbons, so very a sort of mass product, very simple, very unique color, etc., etc. What is interesting in these objects, the fact here you can see what Jacques Savary de Brulon said in the second part of the 17th century. Of course, this is the following edition. One of the important points here is that ribbons can be used for several purposes, okay? So not only for one purpose, but for several purposes. They can be made by several raw materials, for instance, silk with gold and silver, but also worsted silk, wool, flax, etc., etc. And finally, that we have a lot of colors, a lot of designs, according to the creativity of the artisans, okay, but also according to the role that merchants and current fashions can direct. So the fact here is that we have a very small products, but with a large and with a lot of meanings. And I will also try to show you which are these meanings. So these are the ribbons, okay? This very simple product, okay? And that maybe sometimes we think at these ribbons not as a product itself, but a sort of accessory, etc., etc. And in fact, what is interesting to see is the fact that sometimes ribbons are accessories, okay? They were used, for instance, to tie and to enrich clothes. For instance, if you see these wonderful pictures of kings or of ladies or gentlemen, so you can see a lot of this yarn of ribbons here or here. And or for instance, they can be used to seal the tissues, for sewing, for mending clothes, for instance, for the hats or for the shoes, to enrich all these elements. Okay, so and during the 17th and the 18th century, the use of these accessories was also very present in the world of the apparel, but also they were used to enrich domestic interiors and coaches. So they were used within the houses, okay, and in order to enrich the use of the interiors in the domestic environment, or for coaches or for other purposes. So they were accessories, okay. But what is interesting to see is that these type of products, they became also distinctive objects. For instance, in the heraldry, in the religion, but also in the military power, they became a symbol of power, a symbol to communicate something else. If you think also today, or maybe 20 years ago, the role of ribbons for HIV, or in the 19th century, they were used for as a symbol of alcoholism. So ribbons were used to communicate something. But what is interesting to see is that ribbons were also distinctive objects in a very gendered form. For on one hand, they were used to accommodate women's hairstyles, to distinguish families or individuals, but they were also the most representative fairing and they were able to create sentimental links. Here, for instance, you have a picture of, sorry, not a picture. You have a quotation from Goldoni, bankruptcy or the failed merchants, and you have here the case of Truffaldino. Well, what do you think, Mr. Pantalone, to give us gifts to these women? And Pantalone said, we will give them some cutting of things, so small pieces of trap, some ribbons, was galanteries they like so much. So ribbons were galanteries, and as Truffaldino said, yes, my sir, women likes these gifts so much. So they were used for gifts. If you look also at this painting, this the Valentine's Day, the fairing. So the fairing was the gift that was made during the fairs. Okay, George Morland described here the fact that he gave to the women. Here you can find a ribbon, okay, for as a gift. But also, if you look here, the dancing of ribbon, la danza della cordella, is a ceremony that during the wedding, this is a case of Sicily, here in Italy. They organized this ceremony in order to say, you will have a very nice wedding in the future, thanks to the creation of this link between the different families and the couples. So ribbons were very useful to create links. They were used as a gift. They had also a very important sexual meaning. And why they had this also this gendered and sexual meaning? Because, for instance, in the case of men, they were used especially outside. They were shown, they were used outside. For women, they were used also inside. In many, for instance, there are descriptions of these interesting ribbons called in French venir ivoire, that women used very close to the intimate parts of the body. And so in this sense, they became in the late 17th century and during the 18th century, an important element of the spread of this fashion. Fashion and markets. Ribbons were especially sold, but not only in local markets. They were sold in local markets because they were cheap, they were easy to disseminate. Also, they were able to pass counterbands, etc., etc. And especially with the use of peddlers, petty shipmen. Here you can see in Turin in what they said about the fact that the people from the countryside love their shiny appearance and low prices. So ribbons were cheap, were accessible for a lot of customers. But also especially for the long distance trade. And this is one of the most interesting aspects that I found recently working on these small objects. Here you can see at the end of the 17th century, merchant Carello, he discussed about the travel from Piedmont to Lisbon and then to Brazil. And he said that for the ribbons, there is more gain than for other merchandises. They are sold in great quantity. And in the 1678, 20,000 pounds came from the Piedmont. He was in Lisbon, of course, and he described the trade. But some decades later, disputing the consequences of the trade between the Piedmont, Spain, and Western India, the Marquis d'Anvillard stressed that much paper, ribbons, stocking, and smaller ribbons were exported from Italy. So they recalled the role of these small objects. What's interesting here, these are the memories of Patulet. They are published, and from Spain, he said that he described the products that the Genoese merchants exported. For instance, he discussed about silk veils, dentals, and other products. And as you can see here, ruban de toutes les couleurs, so ribbons of many colors, they were exported, and they represented the main product in terms of quantity. What is interesting is also a comparison with other type of fabrics. For instance, here they describe the drap from Rouen, etc., etc. And also, if you see ribbons from Italy and Genoa, of course, the quantity is not so limited if you compare to other silk and other woolen drapes. So the fact that these products were specifically traded also not only in Europe, but especially in the Atlantic world, both on the north and also on the south. The fact is that, of course, Southern America received a lot of ribbons from the Mediterranean, as well as Northern America. They received especially from Coventry or French and other producers. These are also other evidences. For instance, the ribbons from Turin were one of the main imports from Italy in the late 17th century, the Carchas, and when you think about the Cintas de Turin and Cintas de Venezia, this is not to say that they were produced in Turin or in Venice, but they were produced in other places, and then they were exported from these places. This is also an interesting point on marketing strategies that I don't have time here to discuss, but maybe later we will come back. And another point is that they were exchanged with in the correspondence letter or in the merchant books. You can clearly see that they were exchanged with indigo or cochineal from the colonies, and also the producer received special grants in order to import from Seville and Lisbon, especially in Venice, non-European products like coffee, tobacco, sugar, and pepper. So they clearly say, the producers say that we are producing these ribbons in order to import these products. And this is, of course, only a picture to understand better these getaways where they imported these products thanks to the exchange with other products like ribbons and, of course, silks and other products. Another interesting point includes the marketing strategies that the producers started to invite these products. And the role of mediators, the role of merchants, peddlers, the marchand de mondes was necessary in order to convince consumer to buy these products and to show these products at home and outside. But what I would like to discuss with you is this point. So also the fact that the market for the Americas stimulated a process of standardization in the production. So it was necessary to produce the same ribbons from the different productive centers in Europe in order to have the same product to be sold and to be traded outside the Atlantic. For instance, during the 18th century, as you can see here, in the American markets, ribbons were normally of 42 braccia. This is the length of these pieces, and rolled up into a circle, as the Genoese do, with the tips and tape outside. And this merchant, this agent in Lisbon, asked a merchant manufacturer in Padua to change the productive chain, and so to produce the same ribbons as the ribbons of France, England, and Genoa. And he said also to produce at the same height and length. And he said that the savages don't like to adapt to novelties so much. So he asked, this is not true, but he asked to receive a very standardized product. This is the point. So the rise of the consumption of this product in the colonial markets stimulated a sort of standardization, and these letters were exchanged at the end of the 18th century, so well before the introduction of the factory system, etc., etc. So even in a putting out system, there was the importance to standardize the production for a sort of mass market. Work and technology, I will be briefly on this point, only to say that what is important to know is the fact that technology and the organization of production were very different and complex. There were not only the traditional craft production, but there was especially the putting out system, and with a large use of women and children in the countryside. For instance, this is the case of Padua, where these small looms were used to produce ribbons, and we have the list of the women, the female weavers in the villages. And if you look also at this table, you can see that in some villages we can also find 61% of women in the total of the population that worked in this sector. They worked especially during winter, autumn, winter, and they alternate the production of ribbons with the agricultural production. But if you look also at the number of assistants, you have also that sometimes the number of producers was higher than the number of female population. And that means that sometimes they used migrant workers to produce this, or sometimes they use also male weavers, so to combine female weavers and male weavers. But the point is that we have this great recur of industrial workers also in the countryside. But finally, another interesting case is the production in the orphanages and in the hospitals. So here we have a spread of the production of these products, and if you look at the revenues from the textile production for some years, you can see that this was a production very developed also within these orphanages. And why it was so well organized? Because the main producers and the main who controlled the production were the same merchants that were involved in the trade and the production abroad. So these orphanages were likely some proto-factories where they concentrated the production here within here. Very briefly, we have some also process of innovation with the introduction of the silk and giant loom to produce 24 ribbons with the work of only one artisan. We have also struggles within and alternatives within producers and guilds, and the main important aspect for the introduction of these new technologies were the market size of the areas, the structure of production, and the income redistribution within the group of employers. What I would like to offer for the conclusion and for the collective discussion, these points. So first of all, the fact that the ribbon fashion influenced the production market, stimulated capital investment, and increased the labor concentration and the gender division of labor. The role of fashion as a capital symbol was essential to the growth of capitalism, especially during the long 18th century. So we need to combine cultural aspect with economic aspect when we analyze the spread of fashionable objects. As we have seen, the second point is that trimming and ribbons, they increase the profit of the trade, especially for those who controlled the productive chain. Ribbons especially influenced also and stimulated employment in a lot of sectors. For instance, in this case, I described for you only the consequences in Europe for the increase of the industriousness of people, but it's also to connect this with the production of, as we have seen, other products on the other side of the Atlantic. I don't think that ribbons were they spread also because they were something useful to stimulate the industriousness of people, industriosità. Some political observers said that we need to use these industries like ribbon making, hosiery and knitwear making, because it's useful to the industriousness of young workers or since their young age. But it's interesting here that, in my point of view, we cannot speak about a labor or an industrial revolution because, especially for the Italian cities, the production of these ribbons responded to the need of a forced industriousness. So the fact that they were obliged to work in order to increase their wages and their family budget. So it was not a free industriousness like in the Jan de Vries model of northwestern Europe. Here it was more a forced industriousness in this case, especially because we have seen that labor was not always free, like in the case, of course, of the orphanages, but you know more than me, maybe in the case of the Atlantic regions. The third point, the fourth point, labor commodification, as we have seen, with very different and multiple labor relations. So we don't have only wage labor, but a lot of mixed form from household to self-employers to coerced labor within the orphanages, and we cannot say that we have only a model of free wage labor in all these areas. The impact of this labor commodification and of the production was also not outside Europe, but also within Europe. And the impact of the diffusion of these new methods of production had an impact for the organization of the productive chain. Finally, the last point, that is a question of research, was ribbon an European object? I have not found any evidence of ribbons, for instance, in Indian, Chinese, and Japanese innovations. Maybe I will find in the future, but at the moment, no. I have also seen that there were great difficulties in selling ribbons in the Near East from the Venetian merchants or other merchants involved in this trade. And on the other hand, as we have seen, a lot of these ribbons were sold outside the Americans, outside on the other hand of the Atlantic, so outside Europe, but not in other parts. And so my question is if there was a sort of European identity in these objects. Of course, this supposed European culture of ribbons require further investigation. However, I think that is undeniable that these small wares they constitute a big chapter in the history of the early modern material culture that is also to be discovered. So thank you very much, and I finished my presentation.
Second. ¿Me oís bien? ¿Se me oye bien? Sí. I know with this COVID protocol, but there is a lot of people here listening to you. I know that you only see me, but I'm not the only one here. Trust me. So thank you very much for this very interesting conference. I will speak Spanish now, just to make my mind easier, sorry, just for that. Pero muchísimas gracias por esta conferencia tan interesante en la que me ha gustado especialmente esta idea de poder contar una gran historia a partir de objetos pequeños, como objetos de la vida cotidiana y además objetos que están muy vinculados al consumo y al consumo femenino. Al final nos permiten contar una gran historia. Y bueno, yo tenía alguna pregunta, pero veo que Amelia Almorza, que es una de las grandes especialistas que tenemos en la UPO, precisamente en consumo femenino y en consumo femenino en el mundo atlántico, tiene levantada la mano, así que le voy a dar la palabra. No sé, Amelia, porque estás online. Tengo que convertirla en moderadora, creo. Ya está hecha moderadora. Vale, Amelia.
Hola.
Adelante.
Si no te hago la pregunta a ti, Natalia, y tú la haces. No sé si me escucha Andrea.
Sí, te ascolto.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Encantada de saludarte y de haber escuchado la presentación y el trabajo tan hermoso y la investigación tan bonita y tan buena que nos has contado. Y estoy encantada de escucharte, encantadísima, porque estoy en un proyecto de investigación con Panamá, sobre Panamá, que dirige Bethany Aram, y con mi compañero Alejandro García Montón, que trabajamos también ahí en la Pablo de la Vide. Hemos trabajado los inventarios y almonedas en Panamá a principios del siglo XVII, y nos salen un montón de cintas. Y yo no sabía muy bien, no entendía, me parecía algo muy curioso, como exótico, como que hacen aquí tantas cintas. Entonces decirte que nos están apareciendo mucho antes de las fechas que tú estás dando, ya desde 1600. Desde 1600, 1620 aproximadamente, tenemos al menos identificadas 15, grupos distintos de cintas de colores. En principio todas vienen de Europa, forman parte de este tipo de productos que se consumen, de este tipo de productos europeos que se están consumiendo en América y que se están llevando a América para, que están dando este nuevo mundo colonial, vinculados a la nueva clase social, a vincularse con lo europeo, a construirse la nueva identidad, etcétera. A veces aparece que son cintas de seda, otras veces son cintas de hilo, muchas veces son cintas de colores, a veces hay cargamentos de 400 cintas. A veces dicen cintas de Italia, no siempre dice que son italianas, pero obviamente, y después de lo que tú has contado, la mayoría o en gran parte estaban viniendo de allí, porque además suelen venir también vinculados a otros productos que también vienen de Italia, sedas de Italia, fundamentalmente. Entonces, bueno, como digo, me ha encantado escucharte por lo que se vincula con el trabajo que estamos haciendo. Voy a contactarte para intentar comunicarnos o discutir esto un poquito más personalmente, pero entonces la pregunta en concreto que yo te iba a hacer era ¿hasta qué punto sabes o qué nos puedes decir de la exportación hacia la América española? Porque has hablado de informantes en Lisboa, ¿no?, que hablaban de exportaciones, pero no sé si en ese caso se están refiriendo hacia Brasil o si tienes alguna información sobre estos mercaderes, estos grandes mercaderes genoveses que estuvieran exportando productos de seda o de cintas hacia la América española. Esa es la pregunta, y así soy más breve. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, because I'm not surprised, but I'm very happy that you are discovering this consumption and this trade of these ribbons. The consumption and the production started especially in the late 16th century. So at the end, during the 80s or 90s of the 16th century, we already find the spread of this consumption and production in Europe, at least. And I'm very happy that you see also at the beginning of the 17th century the arrival of these products, because I totally agree with you that this process is something that started at the end of the 16th and early 17th century, especially when after the growth of the where there is a process of reconstitution of the European fashion, they try to sell also cheaper products in the silk, and they try to use ribbons also to how can I say, to enlarge the variety of products, comparing with the previous silk of woolen goods. And I totally agree, they were not only pure silk, but they were also mixed. I found also silk and flax, silk and linen, etc., etc. So this was only to say that I'm happy. I'm very happy, and I'm happy to learn more and to read more about this, because I'm sure that they were used also to transmit some meanings and to create a new type of social class, also copying the European identity, etc., etc. About the specific question, unfortunately, this is the part that I have to do, in the sense that when I started to try to do some research on the trade, so looking more at the merchants, etc., etc., the COVID arrived. So I stopped my research 1 year and a half ago, and so I don't know more than these first quotations that I found in the archive of Turin, etc., etc. So they speak about Brazil, but what about the wool? So especially maybe they sent to Brazil and then they spread across other places. What I would like to say is that it's interesting to in a paper that I wrote, I tried to explain also the fact that when we see, for instance, Cintas de Venezia, it was especially because they traded from these ports. So we see cintas from Genoa, but it's not because they were produced there, but because they were traded from that. And they used the place of trading, the trading places, also as a brand. Okay, so they started some branding strategies in order to say, for instance, but also in France. In France, the ribbons were produced in Saint-Chamond, that is 40 kilometers near to Lyon, but the ribbons were called ribbons from Lyon, but they were not produced in Lyon. was the fact that the merchants from Lyon exported these ribbons. And this is very, very interesting because they tried also to transmit an idea of exotic products. So in this case, for instance, they were produced in Turin, but also in Racconigi, or in Vigevano, very close from Turin. But they called Cintas from the Turin because it was the main place of distribution. So, and they used these strategies. They were very branding strategies to transmit something else. Yeah. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to answer you, but this is the point that it is important to study. So better to understand the last the part of the distribution chain, okay, from the traders to the consumers. Mm. Mm.
Mi si sente? No, devo premere. Mi si sente. Se no vengo lì. Oh. Te? Mi si sente?
Grazie.
Sí, pero no lo escucha Caracausi.
Buonasera, mi permetto di parlare in italiano?
Sí, sí.
Rispondo in italiano? Cosa dici? Ok, vado piano e rispondo in italiano. Allora, intanto grazie a te, veramente, e se possiamo rimanere in contatto mi farebbe anche piacere. Per quanto riguarda i centri di consumo, quello che è interessante soprattutto nel tardo 600, durante il 700, è l'uscita dalla corte ovviamente e la diffusione nelle botteghe, nelle shops delle città. si diffondono anche queste bambole, almeno in area italiana, proprio le piavole de Franza, che mostravano proprio tutti gli agghindi che si mettevano attorno, e ci sono proprio le descrizioni delle donne che si avvicinavano alle botteghe per vedere i prodotti e per consumarli. C'è proprio anche tutta una poesia, una letteratura molto bella che le distingue affamate di questi nuovi prodotti dalle Americhe, e nuovi prodotti che venivano prodotti. C'erano dei centri di produzione importanti sicuramente, da Lione a Venezia stessa, a Londra stessa e così via. Per quanto riguarda invece l'invio dall'America, intanto dobbiamo distinguere tra nord ovviamente e centro-sud. Per quanto ho letto adesso, ma è tutto su letteratura secondaria, cioè tutto su libri, devo ancora fare delle ricerche in luogo e mi piacerebbe un giorno farlo. Però per quanto riguarda questo, allora, in America del Nord, quindi nella costa orientale, c'erano venivano inviati campioni ogni 6 mesi per mostrare i nuovi prodotti di nastro, che vengono descritte le donne anche lì molto eccitate dell'arrivo di questi campioni, perché poi potevano fare gli ordini e sarebbero arrivati con le spedizioni successive. E per quanto riguarda il Sud America, ho molte meno informazioni da questo punto di vista, e da quello che sembra per i produttori, cioè io ti dico per i produttori, c'è proprio, allora, vabbè, chiamavano selvaggi, ma secondo me è la classica narrativa che veniva usata in questi documenti per dire i severi orientali e i selvaggi delle Americhe, ma era tanto il linguaggio che veniva usato, ecco. No, loro avevano bisogno, questo sì, come produttori, di prodotti standardizzati, probabilmente per facilitare le spedizioni, ecco, da questo punto di vista. Questo per quanto riguarda quelle spedizioni che ti dicevo passavano da Lisbona, e che la gente, ho visto anche altre lettere, li continuava a dire: ma no, me li devi produrre così perché sennò io non te li vendo. Capire poi se è la gente stesso oppure che vuole qualcosa più che gli altri che chiedono, questo è difficile, questo non te lo so ancora rispondere, vediamo se riusciamo prossimamente a capirlo. Però quello che appunto si cerca sempre più di fare è di imporre anche delle mode che sono frequenti ogni 6 mesi. Poi ovviamente con i nastri semplici no, perché quelli sono di quel colore, sono di quelle cose. Il nastro blu è il nastro dell'amore nelle colonie del nord. Il blu rappresentava proprio il nastro dell'amore che si dava agli innamorati da questo punto di vista. Il nastro rosa invece, quello rosa, è della corte d'Inghilterra. Lì è Giacomo, ecco, questo sì, nelle corti ancora, è Giacomo II che porta questo. C'è una domanda una lunga domanda, vedo, aspetta. Ok. Sì. Grazie. Intanto ciao Alejandro, spero di rivederti presto. Ci conosciamo, ci conosciamo. Allora, cerco di riassumere, spero di rivederlo presto perché comunque siamo amici, insomma. Allora, no, il valore di mercato nelle Spanish America no, questa è tutta una parte su cui, anzi, mi piacerebbe molto, quando avrete tempo, scambiarci anche qualche messaggio, qualche mail, e provare a capire insieme come magari posso approfondire questo aspetto dal punto di vista dell'altra parte. Quindi veramente questo non ce l'ho. Tuttavia, no, ho quello della differenza tra i costi di produzione e prezzi di mercato fino a Lisbona, quello sì, ce l'ho. Mi manca la parte ultima. e ti devo dire che già tra il costo di produzione e, e la vendita e l'intermediazione, già lì ci sono guadagni veramente, veramente molto alti. Cioè questi erano prodotti che erano prodotti a bassissimo costo, a bassissimo prezzo, avevano un margine di guadagno veramente molto alto, almeno fino fino a Lisbona sono riuscito un po' a capirlo. La seconda domanda, sì, no, qualche cosa sulla distribuzione c'è, non so quanto fossero loro, dunque, certamente fino a, non so quanto fossero loro responsabili, cioè certamente in alcuni casi fino a Madrid o a Siviglia con qualche mercante genovese arrivavano, ma non erano così tanto responsabili perché erano tante catene che si intermediavano tra di loro, cioè chi produceva poi vendeva e dopo il distributore doveva successivamente riprenderlo, insomma. Qui abbiamo veramente una catena molto frammentata, ecco, tra i vari passaggi. E ciao ancora, spero di vederti presto. I campioni, samples, ok, yeah. Mm. Ah. Yeah, yeah. Ah, wonderful. I don't have examples of samples sent to the Americas, to the Southern Americas, unfortunately, and I have only samples of the request of big orders to send to be sold in Lisbon. But this point is very interesting. Also, the fact that for books also samples were used, and yeah, and it was interesting because it also had consequences on the orders that the customers did.
Perdón, ¿tenemos alguna pregunta más aquí en la sala? No? Okay. And any other question on YouTube? I think, no, I think. So thank you very much, Professor Caracausi. I don't know if we have any, no. No, ¿verdad? José María. Perdón, no tenemos más preguntas, ¿no? Okay. So thank you very much, Professor Caracausi, for your very interesting, very stimulating conference. And we make a break, a 10 minutes break, and we will come back with the conference by Fran Cebreiro. So thank you very much again. Thank you very much.
Okay. No, thanks to you, and I hope to see you soon in presence And sorry, but now I'm very kaput.
Yeah.
I will try to follow, but the vaccine is not so easy.
Yeah, we
So,
totally understand. So thank you and
Okay.
congratulations for your second dose, and thank you.
Bye. Okay,
See you
bye.
soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Hope to
Bye.
see you soon. Bye.
Yeah, sure. Ahora, bueno, perdón. Hacemos un pequeño descanso de 10 minutos y seguimos con Fran Cebreiro. Muchísimas gracias.